This is a vintage 1940s Delta 10-inch tilt-top table saw and jointer combination. This was my grandfather's. He bought it used in the 1950s. I don't know exactly when. The 1940 Delta Tools catalog shows this exact setup. Pop used it significantly in remodeling 2 different homes, one of which was before I was born. Then when I was a teenager, I remember it at our house being used by both he and my dad in building out a basement area that eventually became my bedroom. Pop's passed away, and all these years later, this is still in use. I've put it through the paces on a lot of projects, including remodeling of my own home. A few months ago, I was working on a project, and the saw broke down for the first time. The trunnion screw lift, which acts to raise and lower the tabletop, stripped out. You see, instead of the blade raising and lowering, to establish the depth of cut, the entire top goes up and down. To cut bevels, the entire top tilts. That's why you see this sitting a little wonky here, is I've already had this apart discovering what needs to be repaired. Of course, an old saw like this, parts aren't made for it anymore. So to do any kind of repair, I had to locate a used part, which took some doing, but I finally did. So I'm ready to take this apart, install the new part, then reassemble and align everything. If you're curious as to what it looks like inside an old saw like this, you'll enjoy this video. So now you can see this worm gear, which will engage with the gear on the threaded shaft I'm replacing. This collar holds everything in place. There is a bearing at the top. The collar threads up tight against that. Then when you turn the crank, the shaft rotates and the nut travels along the shaft. This nut is captured in a casting on the trunnion housing right near the arbor. So turning the crank then raises and lowers this entire unit that's attached to the tabletop. I'm going to take a few minutes and clean all these surfaces. It's difficult keeping this clean because this is not a sealed unit and wood dust does get in here. Of course, too much dust, it can clog the gears. I have everything cleaned up pretty well. I'm ready to assemble it. But before I do, I want to lubricate these surfaces. Now you saw me with WD-40, but I wasn't using this for lubrication. I simply use this as a solvent and a rag for cleaning surfaces. I don't want to use a moist lubricant on my woodworking tools because dust and debris sticks on that and it clogs things up. I like to use just furniture paste wax. It's a dry lubricant and you know, it doesn't cause any problems down the road. So I just take chunks of paste wax and kind of rub it on any of the surfaces that are bearing surfaces and make sure that you know, those are coated pretty well. I'm also going to rub some onto the threads on this shaft here. So this is ready to assemble. I'm going to put the bearing the top. Oh, I got to go up this way. Bearing in the top. Put the collar in. Now, I have noticed this retaining collar here is very much like the one that holds this crankshaft in, and this one has a lock nut on it that holds that once you get it tightened to where it's supposed to be. This one does not. It looks like it's supposed to have some sort of collar or nut that fits around there. Since I don't have a lock nut for it, I am going to secure this in place and just use a little bit of thread lock on here. That should allow me to sort of get this in the right location and then have it stay in place. Okay, I think that's ready to go. Now I'm also going to put a little bit of this on the bearing surfaces over here. Yeah, just wax this up a little bit too. The arbor, it rotates very smooth. There's absolutely no play in this. It sounds a little dry, but I don't want to lubricate this with anything wet because, again, dust would just stick in it. It's sort of an open housing design here, very much like a bicycle hub. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just regular ball bearings running in a race on each side of this. All right, I'm going to get this put back together here. This should slide right onto there. And all I have to do is line the nut into that trunnion housing, just like that. That's pretty easy. Okay, There's a spring washer, goes on each of those, a flat washer, and then the retaining nut. And these just need to be snugged up enough that everything just stays firmly in place. Back on with the top. Let's see, it's gonna come out this way. There we go. Right around there. So it's gonna stay there for a second while I figure out how to get these bolts in. Now I'm not going to tighten these up all the way. I got to actually leave them a little loose because I need to square this whole table up with the blade, and that's going to involve mounting the blade and making a series of cuts and checking that everything is square. Nice.